The end is here, which means change is about to happen. Happy Friday, friends. It's Friday. It is the last Friday in June. It is, hopefully you guys, everybody had a good week. It was as expected, sort of, because it is the end of Microsoft's fiscal year. It was a bit quieter than we have seen previously. That doesn't mean there aren't things to talk about, and there are a ton of questions this week. So hopefully you had a wonderful month of June. Summer is here. Hopefully you are hopefully you're staying cool, calm, and collected. Or if you're in the southern hemisphere, warm, hearty, and healthy. I guess we'll go with that. What a weird way to start a podcast. Anyways, two headlines that are worth pointing out. Microsoft has begun telling some clients that Russian hackers viewed their emails. Now, Microsoft isn't explaining how many customers are they're telling right now, and this really comes from, I think, customers actually saying they've been contacted by Microsoft at the end of the day. And so Microsoft is now, right, like kind of dealing with that, and at least they're being transparent about it. And so there's that. And then on the gaming side of the house this week, there is this little thing where Microsoft, or I should say Xbox, I guess, struck a deal with Amazon. And so now you'll be able to stream your games on Amazon Fire Sticks. Now, I don't know the actual population base of the Fire Stick, but, and this is very subjective, but it feels like if you're not using, well, I guess Roku would probably be the second place. This is probably like, Amazon's got to be third, right? There's probably Apple TV is probably the most prominent device, a Roku family of devices, and then probably Amazon. So that's a relatively big win for Xbox, getting their goods in front of a lot more people. Now, one of the big things that is really happening, and we probably won't know what this actually means until maybe next week at the earliest, is that it is the end of the fiscal year. And what does that mean, Brad? Yeah, Brad, you say this all the time. It's the end of the fiscal year. What the heck do you actually mean? It means that this is effectively a new calendar year for Microsoft starting on July 1st, which also means that things get reset. And what I mean by that is that if org changes are going to happen, typically they would happen starting July 1st. Now, they've probably already communicated these changes, or at least to management they would already know. If there's layoffs, typically in historical Microsoft fashion, now is about the time we hear when that's going to happen, or what the cuts are going to be, if there are going to be cuts. And so we will find out here in the next couple weeks how that actually sort of plays out. I'm expecting that we're going to see some reorgs across the company as well, primarily because AI, right, has become this massive juggernaut thing for Microsoft, and I suspect that they're going to reorganize certain groups around that effort. We've already seen certain things. They've brought in new people to lead certain divisions, and it would not surprise me in the slightest to see additional deck shuffling. We've already seen some in the Xbox, by the way, with marketing, right? Marketing is now being distributed closer to the game title rather than being sort of a top-down approach. And so we will see how that sort of shakes out. I do expect that we'll continue to see Windows sort of rot away in the aspect of things being shoved in there that people don't really care about, and we're already going to see some in 24H2. Meaning Microsoft will use the veil of convenience to push and promote things, such as in the start menu, we will soon see that you can manage your Microsoft account and subscription services directly from the start menu, which is on one surface, you're like, or not surface hardware, but one aspect is like, hey, that's great. I can manage it all in one place. On the other side is they will now be able to use that to say, look, your certain subscriptions are expiring, or you don't have subscriptions, please sign up, sort of things. And I suspect that we will continue to see ARM be a big factor for Windows going forward. It seems like the launch now has gone fairly well, minus the whole recall thing. We'll see how they recover from that when they do relaunch it, and see what sort of timeline that does land for Microsoft at the end of the day. But ARM is going to be the future. And I think the reason I keep saying that is, right, we got through the Qualcomm thing, but we keep hearing it time and time again that 2025, we're going to see things from potentially NVIDIA, AMD, and what was the MediaTek, where other companies are going to be bringing ARM chips online. And so Office, I'm not expecting too much, although there is some chaos or shenanigans, however you want to describe it, in the EU right now, where their teams' initiatives to appease the EU were not sufficient. And so there might be some changes within the Office org related to that, and I continue to expect that Azure will be the bell cow for Microsoft and growth and revenue. And yeah, we'll see. It's hard to predict what is, like, I think if we all said a year ago, hey, Microsoft's going to completely shift everything they do to Copilot, right? We all probably would have missed on that. I think we would have said maybe somewhat, like AI has always sort of been a thing for literal decades at this point. But here we are with Microsoft putting, AI is now the center of the Microsoft universe, and so everything is going to revolve around that going forward, at least from a growth perspective. From a traditional revenue perspective, cloud is probably going to be at Windows will continue to make $8 to $9 billion probably per quarter, and Xbox is the unknown. It should grow, would be the expectation with everything that they have invested into it, especially with the closure of closing of Activision, not closing of the studios, but closing of that deal. And so we will see. We will see. Love to know your all predictions of fiscal year 25, which is going to be happening on Monday. So that's when it starts. So let's jump over to the questions of the week, because there are a ton to finish out this fiscal year from Microsoft. And Mr. PKI dropping it off with the first question of many. He says, I was thinking about how Start 11 is running as an ARM executable versus emulation mode. So this question comes from actually a conversation I had with Paul Thrott, where one of the challenges of running a Windows on ARM device right now is you want to make sure you're running the ARM iteration of an application if it is available. And that is actually kind of hard to determine unless it's like explicitly stated or you explicitly installed the ARM version. You don't always know if you're getting the ARM version or the emulation layer or the emulated version running on that version of Windows. And so Mr. PKI runs Start 11, and I'm full transparency, I think everybody knows by now, but I build the Start 11 app, or I run the team that does, and we support ARM. Now, one of the questions became is like, how do we indicate with Start 11 whether or not an app is running the actual ARM version, because it does have an ARM native executable. And so he's suggesting that on the help about page that we could possibly list it there, which is not a bad idea. I was actually thinking that through when Paul and I were talking yesterday. That would seem to be the logical experience. The one thing I will tell anybody who is running Start 11 on ARM, if you're not running the ARM executable, it won't run. We actually intentionally block it. We had to do that prior to us supporting ARM, and so we left that in there. So if you're running ARM and Start 11, you are absolutely running the native version. The Joe Finn dropping in with a question. He says, when Windows 8 was being introduced, there were a bunch of mobile-like apps that were launched at the same time, like phone, messaging, maps, etc. But since ARM experience was so terrible, I'd assume that these apps had basically no usage and since have been removed or seriously been reduced feature set. 12 years later, we finally have good ARM and soon cellular service, which will be arriving in the fall. Surface devices. Do you expect Microsoft to reinvest in those types of apps, or has that shipped out? I do not expect them to reinvest in that type of app. I don't think there's any data suggests that they should. I think a lot of people, myself, I still have this innate desire to have a mobile-like interface on the Surface Pro when you detach that keyboard, right? Because don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of the Surface Pro, but if you're just casually sitting on the couch and you don't have the keyboard attached, the iPad is still a better experience. And I think Windows 8 was trying to solve that, and that's kind of where Joe is floating around with this question. But no, I don't see Microsoft I don't think that they have any justifiable reason to dump significant amount of investment into building up mobile-like experiences for their desktop applications, even though they now have ARM. I just don't see it. And it pains me to say that because, don't get me wrong, I would love to see it, but I don't think the ecosystem is there, and I don't think the financial incentive is there either at this point. So T182 says, I've been pondering how Microsoft has been bringing Windows 11 features to Windows 10. This is absolutely true, and also is still shocking that they're doing this. But anyways, why not just keep bringing the 11 bits over to 10, have an enablement package to turn on these features, and you'd be running Windows 11. Why go through the work of having to later upgrade installs over time as features die off and kick to dead bits? Yep. So you're not wrong in the conceptual nature of what Microsoft could do. They could just turn 10 into 11 because, let's be real, Windows 11 just is 10, but with some additional features. It's not like there was a kernel rewrite. It's not like there's anything significant under the hood, with one exception. There's some TPM requirements, but again, those are they're hard requirements, but they were hard coded. They can very easily go back and do that. The one thing you're discounting here is the marketing angle of it, right? HP, Lenovo, Acer, all those guys loved Windows 10 release because they're like, look, you have this Windows 10 box, it's old, get the Windows 11 one. And so that's why they won't do it. Microsoft wouldn't backtrack at this point because what would be the advantage of doing this, right? People who are on 10, there's a certain demographic of people who are on Windows 10 who are consciously choosing Windows 10 because they don't like how Windows 11 looks. And so those people will never upgrade. And then there's the people who have hardware that just doesn't meet Windows 11 requirements. They will also never upgrade. Microsoft hopes that the people who don't have hardware will eventually upgrade to help continue to spur PC sales. So there's no economic advantage for Microsoft to do that, which I think will justify a lot of the reasoning why they would never will. Rafik says, hi Brad, with Microsoft infusing AI into the whole Windows system, so you can now do everything without much effort, and if that happens, will it make Microsoft Windows more popular or less popular with the general public? So right now I would probably say it's less popular because of the fiascos that happened with Recall, right? Recall was a publicity nightmare. I'm not saying it was an AI nightmare, but it was like, it's like you guys didn't think that this might go sideways on you when you didn't do, check all the boxes with everything that needs to happen. I don't know if general AI is going to sway Windows one way or another. I continue, the thing that continues to sort of bubble in the back of my brain here is what is Windows 12 going to be? Right? Windows 11 had this new UI or whatever. Windows 12 feels like it should be the first OS with AI. That would have been the pitch for Windows 12. But I don't know. You can't really say that anymore now that Mac OS will launch before Windows 12. And Windows 11 has certain and various AI features too. I don't quite know. And I got to be real here. I don't know how much the general public cares about AI in Windows. I really don't. I don't have a good sense. I go ask my mom, Mom, what AI features would you be excited about in Windows? And she would look at me with a blank stare. And I think that would be a lot of people, because a lot of people just don't, there's the productivity side, which you could go ask people at work. They'd say, yeah, do my job for me, make my Excel spreadsheets. But from home use, pay my bills, I guess. I don't know. I don't have a great answer for that. Brother Nod says, is the price of the Surface Pro Flex keyboard with pen justified, or are they just price gouging their customers? Ooh. And then he has a follow-up question. So I believe it's over $400. I want to say it's $450 for the Surface Pro Flex with the pen. I don't know. So part of me just completely says, if you're willing to spend $450 for the pen and the keyboard to get the best keyboarding experience on a Surface Pro, what you really want is just a laptop. Get the Surface laptop, you're probably going to be happier. Yeah, there might be some pen limitations, but really think about how much you need that pen. Is it a novelty? Is it a thing you need? I don't know. I don't have any indication it's price gouging. I mean, Apple sells their attachable keyboards for the Surface Pro as very expensive as well. They're just expensive. And so I don't think it's personally worth it. I know that the reviews have been relatively good, but it's $450 if you buy the entry level tablet, it's $1,000 roughly, something like that, especially if you get one on sale. So 50% of the cost for a keyboard, you want a laptop. Unless money's no object, then have at it. His second question says, also, how did you decide on the keyboard and switches that you have? So, I am a bit of a Keyb fan. I spend a lot. I haven't spent any money in the past 6 months on the keyboard, but so this is a very loaded question because keyboards can be extremely personal. So if you don't care about keyboards, maybe skip ahead 30 seconds. Who am I kidding? 5 minutes. Keyboards are the thing that you intimately touch on a computer. That is the only part of the OS that you actually touch. It's the only thing. And so, yeah, maybe spending $450 on the Pro Flex keyboard is worth it because, again, to that point. But anyways, for my desktop computer, I just wanted something. The noise is called a thock. So there's different ways you can achieve that sort of a noise, and it's sort of like a chasing of the dragon if you're a keyboard fan, because there's no perfect keyboard, right? The perfect keyboard is the one that you love, and the keyboard that I'm using right now is a GMMK Pro, which is a solid block of milled aluminum, and this thing is stupidly heavy. And then I believe I have Panda switches that are what are they're I can't remember the exact. They're not blues. They're definitely reds. and I believe they're linears as well. I'd have to actually look this up. The way I was trying to find it is I really liked MX Blue cherry switches, like that tactile click. But then the click sort of started to wear out. Like it's really cool. But then over time, it gets scratchy. And so I went to a linear style switch, and then I used the GMMK Pro double shot PBT caps on there, and it sounds fantastic, and it's a joy to type on. So the reason why I went with that deck at the end of the day is that it's just aluminum, and it's just that, and you can swap the switches, you can swap the keys, you can do everything else, and I'll probably swap things out here eventually just because of the nature of the enjoyment out of it. Murdad says, does Microsoft acknowledge user concern about bloatware and ads in Edge, Windows, and other products? Any plans to adjust their strategy? They will not address their strategy until they see significant market share decline of their products. I think Edge is continuing to grow, which would suggest that people actually like these features. I am personally not one of them. Edge was perfect right about when it was announced, when it had all the basic features, and then they started adding things like crypto wallets and couponing and other things, and I know some people will like them, and so I can't say that it's a bad strategy, but I wish that Microsoft would stop turning things on and let you opt in rather than having to opt out. So Microsoft won't change the way they are doing things until there is significant ramification, as shown by the bottom line. Lynn Hardston said, a while ago you mentioned you were looking into getting an ARM machine for testing purposes, I think. Did anything come of that? Any interesting purchase one of these new Copilot Plus PCs? So I do have an ARM device now. Actually, I've had it for a little bit. I have the Surface Pro X that has an ARM device. We also, Stardock itself, so my team will be getting some AI ARM devices. I'm not sure which route we're going to go yet. We actually reached out about getting some of the dev boxes, but the more we thought about it, the dev box may not be an ideal solution for us, primarily because we need a touch screen. Because Microsoft, actually, the way they handle drivers and experiences in Windows depends on if a touch screen is attached. Granted, we could buy one of the ARM dev boxes and buy an external touch screen, but at that point, you're like same pricing category as some of these new devices. So I am certainly interested in them. There is no doubt about it. The biggest challenge I have right now is it worth going to spend roughly at least $1,000 to use the same Windows I kind of got today? And that is a thing. Like, right? Money's money, and I have bills to pay just like everybody else to drop $1,000 to buy another version of Windows. When I already have a Surface Pro X that does everything that I need at a basic level, I suspect I will eventually. What I would really like to buy, though, and this is me just kicking the can down the street, is like an NVIDIA powered ARM device. That would be super interesting to me for multiple reasons. And Mr. PKI wrapping it up for this week and the last of the fiscal year 24 from Microsoft. He says, I have been trying to set up a laptop and ship it to some family members, but why is Microsoft making it so hard to have local accounts for family members? I was tempted to install Start 11 for them, but since it was almost impossible to create local accounts, I gave up. Yeah, Microsoft doesn't like local accounts because they make the argument that it's a better experience for the end user. Because if you have an MSA, and now I believe MSAs don't have to be true Microsoft accounts, but Microsoft likes an identifier to be able to push things in your direction. Microsoft won't say that it's for advertisement targeting, for user tracking and all those other things, but I think deep down we all sort of know it's like, there's some of that going on there, even if it's not explicitly for that, and there's some other happier, healthier reasons why you should be happy to give Microsoft an MSA. It just still feels like, hey, no matter what you do, as soon as you force that requirement, you're giving up some control, and people don't like that. As for why Microsoft is making it so hard, it's because it's to their benefit. They think they can give you, the end user, a better experience by being able to deliver customized experiences based on your profile. That is my expectation or thought process through that. I'm sure Microsoft has a slightly different take on that. I'd love to hear what it is, and then I'd love to know if it's the truth. So there you go, guys. I am traveling. Next week is a holiday in the U.S. Actually, my company is closed. We are doing a little bit of traveling the next 2 weeks. Podcasts may happen, but I'm actually gone both Fridays, so I'm not sure when they will happen. We will see what happens, guys. If something comes up, obviously, I will do my best to make it happen. As always, Thanks for tuning in, and make sure to keep it subscribed here because the only BS on this podcast is me.